Hello and thanks for joining us on CTV. It's the 2nd of March 2022, and what that means is that here on CTV we're celebrating the month of the woman with programming that is leading up to International Women's Day, and we're talking about gender equality. We're bringing you a special set of specialists who are dealing in issues that affect young girls and women. And this morning we're talking about how gender stereotypes form in children. Quite a peculiar topic, but stay with us before that lingo gets you lost. Our guests will be breaking that down for you and also sharing their personal experiences related to that. So with me is Dr. Sabrina, who needs no introduction. And we also have Letisia Murungyi. Do you pronounce it as Letisia? Letisia Murungyi. Yes. A very interesting name that she has. Welcome, ladies, to the set.
Thank you.
And thank you for honoring our invitation to be on CTV.
Truly amazing. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. And just like we've mentioned, we are talking about how gender stereotypes form in women. I'll just start with you. What stereotypes did you have as a child related to gender, and maybe do you still have them? Did you unlearn them, relearn them?
Okay, maybe I'll go first.
Yeah.
I believe for me, one of the stereotypes that I had that is associated with gender is that a girl should not be opinionated. If you speak up quite a bit, if you ask so many questions, if you try things without, asking people first, it was considered, I would tell with myself that it was sort of frowned upon in like school settings, compared to when the boy did it. I actually remember there's a time I was trying to defend myself from a boy. It's not a good one, but I was trying to defend myself from a boy, and I stood up to him. And I got a bit aggressive because that's what he used to do with me. But I remember the reaction to me compared to the boy who had been doing this was different, And I was told things like, "You're a girl, you should not, you don't stand up to a boy like that. Come and report." But this boy had been doing this to me all the time. Now I'm not saying and I'm not saying that aggression is good. But you see, I saw it and made us thinking, but he does this to me, he stands and he pushes me. Why won't I push him back? Now, I'm not saying aggression is good, but it was the way, the discipline methods. With me, it was, you're a girl.
So they wanted you to be more graceful, yes, even when you are oppressed.
As opposed to, aggression is not good. Let us look at it a different way. The point was, you're a girl, and the person was talking to me. With the boy, nothing was said to him. So I figured that, okay, maybe I'm too strong, I'm too aggressive, and I maybe need to calm down a bit more. So for me, that was like one of them. And of course, the typical ones about cooking and, girls need to learn how to cook and boys don't, and girls should clean and boys don't. So those are my experiences.
And do you still have some of them, or you're still dropping them along the way?
I'm still working on them, because some of these things, when you're a child, and they are part of you. I'm a child psychologist, and I know what I'm teaching young people, but then it's nature because you've been, groomed like that. So some of them are still working on them.
And that's exactly why we're having this conversation, because we might be talking about children, but these things grow with us and eventually affect us as adults and decision makers and policy makers. Dr. Sabrina, what are some of those things that you had as a child?
I like what Letisia has said, people putting you in a spot and saying you're a girl, don't do this, don't do that. But I want to, say something different, because I was treated differently. My father was a mining engineer. My mother was a nurse. Like a typical mom who worked 8 to 5, did duties, came home, cooked for us. But then my father made sure that we understood what he was doing. I think at the back of his mind, he hoped we would probably become mining engineers.
Just like every parent wants their child to follow in their direction. Yeah.
But yeah, we also did experience some of those genderizations of normalities. For example, the way you sit, Mom was so careful to tell us, "We wumbeko, sit properly," like all the time. "You're a girl, don't speak up." But my father was more liberal, and he encouraged us to do what we should do. And then going to school, whereas it's typical for, when you have a co-ed school with boys and girls, it's the boys who end up becoming the class monitor. I was class monitor from nursery school to P7. And so I ended up appearing like maybe a bully. But I had situations where, boys tried to bully and would gang up as girls and say, "We'll have you at home time.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that was a little bit of my own experience.
And now in your career, you're a doctor, and I understand having a parent who is a medical worker, that typically we sometimes see that all male medical workers are easily called doctors. If you go anywhere in the community, as long as you show up and you're male, whether you're wearing a blue uniform, they'll call you a doctor.
Sure.
And maybe for you in the corridors, I don't know if you experienced
Oh
that.
yeah, I've experienced it a lot. You're walking on the corridors of the hospital, and a parent who's lost or somebody who's looking for directions clearly sees your label, you're a consultant, you're a professor, and then they are calling you nurse. Because that's what they expect. They think that women are always on the lowest radar of the job line. And sometimes I laugh about it. It used to get me a bit itchy, and I'm not a nurse, I'm a doctor, blah, blah. But then I realized, this is what is the stereotypic approach which our society has taken on.
And have you caught yourself maybe in situations with other maybe professions where you're still consciously telling yourself, no, this is not how it is, this is how, yeah.
Very much so. Recently my daughter graduated as an architect, and I know that a lot of men think they should be the architects, like how a girl in the architectural class, how? But things are changing. And sadly, there is something called the pollution theory. Like, men believe, and men have been stereotyped to be in the more aggressive jobs, the more difficult jobs, managerial jobs, whereas a man is a manager, a woman should be the secretary, the tea girl, the cleaner. You're at a meeting and you're all, professionals. And then tea is served, and the men will look at you and they'll be like, please serve the tea. And you're like,
You've experienced
your
that
turn
as well?
now, you guys, your turn.
Yeah.
Like, why should we be the ones to take minutes? And I'm not saying it's wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe we have better handwritings, maybe we have better verbal skills, whereas men are more visual spatial. Women have better verbal and, writing expression in, for meetings. But people take it for granted. Like, if you're in a meeting, let the woman take the minutes.
Typically, not because of what the capabilities are.
It just points to the lowest part. I'm the chairperson. And, even the word chairman, for the longest time possible, it's always been chairman. And when you become the chairman, you're the woman, people are like, should we call her chairman or chairperson or just chair?
Because chairwoman just doesn't rhyme.
Chairwoman doesn't work. No one ever says chairwoman. You're either chair, you're the chairman, you are a chair.
Yeah.
So it varies.
And I like that you took us back to your childhood and how your father sort of empowered you from a very young age. And we have a child psychologist with us here. Help us understand at what age do children start to understand these gender stereotypes and to say maybe this is for girls and this is for boys, and for people who are nurturing and taking care of children, when do we start noticing that?
Actually, this starts as early as even 2 years, as early as 2, when a child, because even before a child speaks, they're picking up from the environment and they're seeing the things in the environment. So you don't actually have to wait for 4 years. By the time children are 2, we've seen them when they come into school, they already are developing an understanding of the world. They're already watching how their parents react to them, how their parents treat them. Things like dressing, actually, when you look at some of the research, the typical blue, pink, you have a girl and so you put her in pink, or you put her in the softer colors, and when you have a boy, you put him in the stronger colors. And then, so for the child, they do not know what they're picking up on, but they're picking up on a difference, especially when they can see.
The brain is forming, even when they don't understand what it's forming.
The brain is actually picking up on these differences, that I look like this, I dress like this, and maybe my brother or a boy dresses like this. So it starts as early as that, even at home. Even sometimes the way parents relate with the different children. You might find that if you have a boy, a father is probably playing those games. Those, you do this with the boy, you do this, and then maybe with the girl, you're more gentle with this girl. And this little girl is thinking, I also want to,
to be
Hustle with
aggressive.
you, tell with you.
Yeah, you actually remind me of there's an article I read, and someone was observing from her neighborhood and noticed that whenever kids would be sent out for games, when it's, you know, riding a bike down the hill and in the estates, it's only the boys who are expected to go, and then the girls are held back because we are trying to protect them from hurting themselves, you know. Yeah.
Yes. But yes.
Not even biological.
Yes.
Because I think it starts from in utero. I mean, girls are exposed to estrogen and progesterone. It's the softer hormone.
Yes.
And boys are bathed in testosterone.
Yeah.
It's a strong hormone. It makes boys stronger.
Yeah.
And even as they are born, they have testosterone. They're bathed in it. It's natural, it's biological. But as a woman is even pregnant and she goes and does that first ultrasound scan and discovers she has a baby girl, oh my gosh, the toys, the things, the color of the room, even as a child is born, they are already placed in
That.
a stereotypic pink room, princess, you know?
Yeah, and just to add to that, when you actually mentioned that, biologically, even when they, when they're born, because of the testosterone, boys, you'll find that a little earlier they're more physically active, but it doesn't mean the girl cannot probably do the same things. And now, like Dr. Kitaka has said, the way you are treating the girl compared to how you're treating the boy, that is where the key thing is. It's not even to say that a girl has to be this, but the way you're looking at them and looking at your gender stereotypes as the parent, because you also look at you have to explore sometimes many parents will actually say they do not have gender stereotypes in this era, but it's something that you actually have to look at very carefully within yourself to see even some of the comments that you make. Something else that we see is maybe when a boy does certain things and you hear comments like boys will be boys.
Yeah, boys will
or
be boys.
You'll hear parents say, oh, he's a boy.
Yeah.
Or you'll hear a teacher say, he's a boy. So with him being a boy, it's probably not even addressed at that level. But then when it's the girl who does it, now it's the things that you don't even have to say girls don't. You also say it with children. The moment you generalize and pick a group and say this group does this, children pick up that, okay, so the opposite group does not do this. Boys play football. So the children pick up that girls do not play football.
So you mentioned something about biology, though I understand that we do have girls, for example, who have a lot of testosterone, and we see it a lot in this generation where you have athletes who are much stronger, or maybe even their physique, they look a lot more masculine.
Just to correct you, every one of us has some testosterone.
The percentages vary. Yes.
Well, some people have more testosterone than others,
Yeah.
and some actually have gender dysphoria and poorly sexual differentiated syndromes, where you can't tell whether they are a girl or a boy, But that's a lot of endocrinology. Maybe we don't want to go in that direction.
Yeah.
But the truth is, when girls are growing up, we are told, because it starts with our parents.
Yeah.
They are molding you, they are nurturing you, they want you to be like them. I recently had a conversation with parents, and a mom said, look, I am trying so hard to turn my daughter into wife material.
Yes.
And I was like, what? Okay, well done, mom.
Yeah.
And then her father is making sure that she does what she wants. And I said, it's okay. Probably he knows better what wife material should be.
Yeah, she can do what she wants and still become a wife.
And then dads also are like dying to have a son so that they have somebody to, to pass on their genes. It's just a natural thing. But I wanted to say that sometimes when girls do what is outside the norm, it becomes confusing even to the boys. My son was recently telling me when he joined Senior 1, he was taking his time to write. The teacher had asked them to roll call, and then this girl pulled the paper away from him, stepped on the desk and said, don't take away the paper, I was still writing. He said to this day he was traumatized. Like, what kind of a girl is this?
Yes. To him, that was not familiar.
Yeah, but if it was a boy, it would have been normal. And this is not to excuse bad behavior. It's just that maybe, I think parents excuse the bad behavior for boys.
You don't pick up on it, but the way you react to the different, the way we are taught, the way we are spoken to, and it's nuances. It's not even very clear. It's just in the ways that you see those reactions from your parents. And something also that I wanted to add was representation. I think when Dr. Kitaka talked about it, in certain professions, children, what they grow up seeing. You see, if in certain professions like football, now there is female football. Yeah. But how often do you see it being broadcasted?
It's actually a lot now.
It's now a lot. But in the past, like now in our time, you would see most of the teams were male teams.
Recently, there was a Ballon d'Or for girls, and I was so impressed with how when this girl won, she was supported by her mom and her sister, and she'd been playing football for the rest of her life. I'm a football player.
Exactly, and there are children that work with the schools.
Football forever.
And now you see that difference with the children now, that the girls want to play football because they've seen it. Like they've seen it. They see that this is just for everybody. For them, it's actually not even, it's just what they have seen. Representation is a big thing. Even in the home, representation. When talking about a father and mother, I was thinking of the question, should parents now try to be in agreement with how you represent to your children? If one is saying, I'm raising you to be a wife, there's nothing wrong with raising your child to be a wife. But then if there is more agreement, between the father's approach and the mother's approach, does that help? And
for me, that's exactly my point. Like, sometimes women feel like my daughter should be exactly like me. It doesn't have to be that.
I think maybe that's a trap that a lot of parents fall into, because maybe they feel, sincerely, I'm a good person.
I'm a good person.
I'm a go-getter, so I would wish my child to be the same.
Exactly like that.
Yes.
But in terms of representation of jobs and even the opportunities, it's quite clear that it's the men who get the better jobs.
Yes.
All over the world, if you look at the amount of money men earn, it's much more than what women earn.
For the same positions.
Even for the same positions. Yeah. And it's generally thought that when a man comes into a position, they should earn more because they are thought to have more responsibilities. They are more aggressive when they are negotiating. Usually get what you negotiate for. Women are shy. They will hold back on, I think I should earn, dollars in tens of thousands.
Does that go back to the point that she talked about how we are raised not to,
not to be assertive, not to be aggressive, calm down, only speak when you're spoken to.
Yeah, so maybe that hinders us from negotiating.
Most likely, but also in the representation of jobs. And I earlier talked about the pollution theory, that women are expected to be in the lowest range of jobs. Yeah. The service provision kind of jobs, tea girl, nurse, the teachers, whatever.
Maids.
And that when women join the other occupations, men start to look down on them. Inadvertently, they feel these women are polluting the occupation, so let's leave it for them,
Yes.
We've seen it in our own profession. Previously, doctors were mostly men, because they would go out, they'd operate, they'd do all those things. But now there's been a lot of sub-specialization. And I went to a university in the United States, and nearly 80% of the women, of the class doing pediatrics was women.
Is it because pediatrics is seen as,
nurturing, caring, and and then just to progress with my argument, that pediatrics gets paid almost the least amount of money compared to, for example, neurosurgery or orthopedic surgery, which is stronger, it's for men, it's male dominated,
That's a very
but the
interesting
day
observation.
women start to become the orthopedic surgeons, the neurosurgeons, then men will be like, let's just leave medicine for these women altogether. Because let's do other things. Let's be the architects, let's be the electrical engineers, let's be the harder things, and let's lower the price,
So at what point does the curve now change, or the balance come in? Because when you say it that way, it's a bit worrying.
Of course it is, but it's not that worrisome, because by the time we get to that point, probably, you know, the World War III would have started. But maybe not.
But I think also we're progressing.
Yes.
We're progressing, like you pointed out, that even when we use the example of football, we're progressing. So there is hope that, you know, when it goes back to that representation, and when you go back to the psychology of why pediatrics, you know, in pediatrics you would consider women, is because there's also that expectation that men, by character, have certain character traits, you know, or should have certain character traits, and then women are more in the other section. So if it is like the communication roles, the nurturing roles, the social roles, that is why the woman will be the receptionist. And when you get into a place and you see a man who is the receptionist, even you, a bit of you is like, oh, it's a man, and he's smiling at you and he's being very hospitable. You're thinking, your brain is
problem? Like,
yes.
Where is he, the receptionist?
Your brain is trying to work it out.
If they're a secretary.
Yes.
And just to say about pediatrics is one of the hardest subjects.
Yes.
Because you imagine you have to learn about nearly half the population of the world from 0 day to 19 years. That's a huge population.
Yes.
And pediatrics, you don't take anybody into pediatrics. It's high quality, high caliber, intelligent people who do pediatrics. And previously, it was so hard for the women to get into pediatrics because it was highly, you know, rated. But then as women became more aggressive and assertive, we were like, you know what, actually we are the ones who should be doing pediatrics.
Yeah, if we are naturalists, then let's do it professionally.
And then the men are like, okay, let's do pediatrics, but do pediatric cardiology. You know, they are different. Let's do pediatrics, but be researchers. Like, okay, yeah, we can talk to the babies, but not to the extent that like, the girls do it.
Well, that's very interesting.
Yes.
So if you have a boy child, for example, because we're talking about equality. If you have your son or your niece, your nephew rather, and they are this softer person, how then are they encouraged to take on this other? Because I believe it's also a challenge for them to try and fit into that.
I think the first thing is just to receive a child as they are, because I always say, anyone who has heard me speak, I constantly say, children are young human beings. So at the end of the day, they are human beings. So again, going back to you as a parent and what you hope that your child will represent, looking at what you hope, your child will be, but then also allowing yourself to learn your child and accept your child. So if you have a boy who seems softer, the comments that you're making, if they pick something that you feel is a bit softer, I know, and especially with our culture, we have certain concerns about gender, and you're thinking that if my child picks a dress, it means they're going to wear dresses. Now that's a whole other topic. But then also you're seeing that we have fashion designers, even in Uganda, who are men, and they are designing the best outfits for, women and all of that. So first and foremost is to always reflect as a parent and look at what you hope for, what you want, not that you have to leave it out, but look at that and then look at your child and try to see that this is a human being I am raising, and this human being might not be me, and then receiving that and building on that, supporting your child as they go through that. And like terms like aggressive, and this has been talked about so many times, aggressive and assertive are two different things, you see, and it's not wrong to be assertive. If we're talking about physical aggression, that's something to teach. But then when you're described as aggressive, when a girl child is described as aggressive, when she speaks up to you or says something aggressive, the words that you're using, with your child, receive your child as they are. Look at them as a human being who has strengths. And some of these things are strengths. Some people have leadership qualities. It is not about this gender or the other gender. And then guide them to be the best leader, not based on, I think they should be like this, or I'm worried the world will not receive them like this. Just guiding them to have people skills, all of those things, but build on their strength and receive the child as they are and work on your stereotypes. Like keep asking yourself, could I have a stereotype? That's so you're constantly aware and awake. That is on the parent side.
So we're going to go for a very short break, but when we come back, there's research that came out in 2021 that indicated that adolescents in Uganda are thinking a little more egalitarian on certain domains. So we'll ask our guests to share with us what their observations are on the journey that Uganda is taking, what we are doing right that is leading us there, and maybe what we should do more in order to reach that. So that is our conversation. You're watching CTV Month of the Woman, a special programming that we are bringing to you in the lead up to International Women's Day, but also CTV is for women and for young women especially. So these conversations are here and for you, and that's why we're bringing you specialists so that we can learn from what they have to offer. We're going for a short break, as I mentioned. Don't blink.
Kcca is back. Come have original Ugandan fun and play the African way at the biggest celebration of Indigenous African Games. Make your way to the Uganda Museum on Sunday, 6th March 2022 and play Kcca as you relive old memories and have a good time with family and friends. We shall also play games like Duel, Sonko, Mweso, Blada, and many more as top-notch DJs and performers keep you entertained. Early bird tickets are available at 10K online and 15K at the door. For reservations, contact 0784 218 964 or 0752 208 608. Kcca is presented by Cheza and powered by Campus B, Up About, Party Prep 256, KQ Hub Africa, and CTV. Kcca, play the African way.
We entertain you. Ngawe tukuwata. Amanya shamemanja omubwatu President Birabiri Mukaga akabonero court. Nanga wento naliya namfuka you can call me Aliya one but tikutema olwaleero.
Ali tubasuubiza ntugenda kubanga tuli mu bitundu ebyenjawulo.
Ani yayambadde obulungi. Kakoye ki akazze ku mulembe. Ne gown ya black erina tiara ya black.
Tiara.
English of my kind. Tiara.
I feel the beat.
You feel the beat?
Yeah.
Olwokuba bakutera ekigendo oba feeling the beat. Show bagiyita situations ko ground. This is a buffet kyagala ky'olyako.
Beerako ku CTV totemye.
Don't blink.
Now showing on CTV. Don't blink.
Now Ugandans, as you know, us tuli bantu abatayagala kututegerera wadde. That's why at CTV we're working tirelessly to make that possible. Now my name is Tim Cash and alongside one DJ Frost we bring you the brunch time request Lubabu.
You make me jump like kangaroo.
I really love Levixo. Wamanya Jetu Bonge.
Dance for me, chicky bong, my number one. You're not you the ginger. If you know how you the cause it drop.
Now this show happens every single weekday between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m.
Now showing on CTV. Don't blink.
Let's hop in my Maserati.
The big debate is back. Bigger, bolder, reloaded. Whether it is securing your future, holding fast to the people power, or the promise of a one Uganda, one thing is certain, the big debate is on.
So why don't you respect the memories of doctors for this?
We have already addressed the issue of increment.
How many people have ever been convicted?
Okay.
The way the politics plays in cabinet.
So now why are they asking for the statement?
Follow mainstream conversations on current affairs and leading policy debates in Uganda.
It is in our interest to handle arrested people very nicely.
Right here on The Big Debate.
Let me finalize this. I was quiet. I was quiet.
It's a hard-hitting talk show on development issues in the political and social-economic arena. Discussions that inform policy and trigger high-level dialogue. Now showing on CTV. Don't blink.
Welcome back from that short break. You're watching CTV Month of the Woman, which means the special programming that we are bringing you here on CTV in the lead up to International Women's Day. But as the name suggests, it's the month. So we are celebrating the entire month, not just up to 8th of March specifically. And to commemorate the day with a lot of meaning, we are holding conversations here on issues that affect young women and girls in our society. And we are bringing you a host of special panelists to discuss those issues with us. This morning, we're discussing a very interesting topic on how gender stereotypes form in children. And we have specialists who are dealing in children to break down some of these issues for us and share with us their experience and research so that we can also pick things as people who are living with children and nurturing children. And because this conversation is important, because what we teach our children is what they grow up with, and this eventually affects policies and how the society will be behaving and acting in future. But then there's some hope, as we discovered before we went for the break, that recent research, which was released in 2021, shows that adolescents in Uganda, there was a research conducted between 11 to 17-year-olds who are beginning to see that roles should not be split according to gender in certain domains, but that's not in all sectors, in certain spheres and in not all spheres. And we had brought it back to our guests to share with us from the people that they're dealing with, the children they're dealing with, what are you observing? Why do you think that, what do you think that we are doing right that is leading to that, and what can we do better? We'll start with what we are doing right.
Yes, of course. Always. We start with what we're doing right. From my experiences with children, with teenagers, some of the things that we're doing right is, again, much as we brought up representation, it is changing. So you find that children come to you and they're picking up cues from their parents. So it's nice to see my mother, you know, in a managerial position. It's nice to see my father hear what I have to say. It's nice. So you find that children are coming to you and they are sharing what they're picking from their homes. So the conversations, you can tell they're picking up what happens in the home. You know, dad says this, mom says this. So I believe that parents are actually making an effort to not put them into categories, you know, that boys do this and girls do that. So we've seen that. Another thing that you see with children is that because they're still picking up a lot, the younger ones, that is now the, you know, from before, you know, that is the 3, 4, 5, 9, 10, 11, they start to reason a bit more, 12 and above. But you also see that they're picking up from what is around them. So you'll have conversations, and someone might think this is something very simple, but something as small as hair, as simple as hair. And I've had girls who come and say, someone said I'm ugly because they cut my hair, you see. And so someone might say that's a small thing. But when you're dealing with that, I realize that it's about appearance. Is it that boys should have short hair, girls should have long hair? And then again, going back to what we're doing right, is that you're seeing many women with, you know, having different looks, you know. A woman can have her short hair, she can dress a bit more. I don't use the word masculine, but she doesn't have to be in a dress all the time. She wears what she wants. If it's a dress,
like a princess.
Yes, if it's a dress, it's a dress. So they're seeing their parents, they're seeing people around them dressing like that. So they question, you know, why is so-and-so saying that I look like a boy? I think I'm okay. So I think we're doing that well. Professionally, they are also seeing that representation. Politically, you can see, you know, our vice president, the recent cabinet, we have women in certain positions, you know, and the children are seeing that, the young people are seeing that. So we're doing right in those areas, and even in the courses that are at the university, or how teachers are encouraging children to get into science, STEM, you know, is a big thing, and STEM for the girl, you know, it has become a big thing, and where schools are trying to encourage girls or boys, whichever, boys being chefs, boys being whatever they want to be. So those reactions and that guidance for children has been good in those areas. So the representation is growing, and what they're seeing with their parents is also helping them as well. And the fact that they are allowed to question, you know, children are allowed to question, to ask you, but why is it like this? Why is it like that? You know, so
does that reflect in the kind of games they play when they're in school? Do you see children being more free to take on different roles? Someone brought to my attention that our children tend to be more free when they go to school. They tell their teachers a lot of things. They open up their hearts and minds. a lot more compared to when they're home. So I believe that you're privy to a lot of information that parents do not even have.
Yeah. Now when you talk about even play in schools, you find that the children will accept what it is that you guide them to accept. We still do see cases where, you know, a boy will come and say, the girl sent me away from the kitchen, you know, the playing that we have, there's like a kitchen set or whatever, and a boy will say, I also want to play that.
Yeah.
And because they are more free, they will come and tell us. So now it goes back to the school. It goes back to the teachers and the people that are speaking to these children and saying, it's okay, go join that. Is that what you want to do? That's okay. So we're saying that at school, there is some effort, but because the children have come from different backgrounds, you still see a certain gender telling a certain gender, you should not do this. Do not do this. So again, it's us who guide them, who are making an effort to say, let the girls play this game. Let the boys play this game. There's nothing wrong with it. We're all the same and it's okay. And that avoiding, you know, to avoid using words like the boys do this. Another thing in schools is when it goes to like sex ed, or talking about, you know, how we carry ourselves, because that still happens. That is also part of school. Yeah. Then you have the senior woman and the senior man. There's nothing wrong with that. But
do we have a lot of senior men? I know senior women are plenty.
we have more senior women than men, I think, but they exist.
Do you know senior men?
To tell you the truth, when there are senior men and senior women, it's the senior woman who's really doing the work. Because senior men are like, really? Should I get into that?
So does that mean that our women are being nurtured a lot more? The young girls are being nurtured a lot more than the
Definitely,
boys?
Yes.
Because boys will be boys.
It's actually becoming a crisis because we've put a lot of effort in supporting the girl child, encouraging them, empowering them, making sure they get into university, into the science, technology, and mathematics courses. And the boys are not being given those privileges. There's so much education and support and skills building and goodness knows what else for the girl child, to the extent that boys are becoming intimidated.
Yes.
Like, what is all this about?
Yeah.
When we walked in, we were listening to toxic feminism. Yes. I don't want us to go in that direction because it's also a danger.
Yeah.
For sure, men are the heads of the household, men are the leaders, and even in a home, the smallest community is the home, the family.
Yeah.
It's so important for men to be in that position of respect, of mutual respect, but also physically they are stronger. And so we need to be careful. Whereas, yes, we are progressing. The Women's History Month is there to celebrate women, women's achievements, celebrate beauty and gender diversity.
Yeah.
But we need to be careful. I always say that too much of anything
is always
bad.
So what I'm hearing you say is you're sending out a message to everyone, every stakeholder, to not ignore the men.
Don't ignore
I think,
the men.
and especially the men, because the women, of course, are doing the most. They saw the need and they're empowering the young girls. So the men or boy naturals should also do the same.
Exactly.
So that we have a balance, because we are talking about balance.
Socially developed economy.
Yes.
Because you can't leave anybody behind. Let us not leave the boys behind.
Yes.
It is much easier to mend a broken boy than a broken man. And men can easily get broken because they are spited, because they've not been empowered to be confident, because they don't have a job. I mean, let's get serious about this empowerment for both.
So let's not say boys will be boys. Take care of them, because when they're not supervised, they'll lead to broken men, like you mentioned.
And even in school, we're seeing that. In schools, we're seeing that the boys feel like now they need to fight for something, not fight physically, but you know, when you're looking at the emotional expressions, because they feel that the girl, everything is, you know,
for the
girl. So you find that you're sometimes working with a boy and he is frustrated because he knows that with me, you know, I'm either you're not paying attention to me, or you're going to tell me that I have done this with the girl. So they have this pent up, there's this need now to, you know, protect themselves or fight for themselves. That's what I'm seeing with the boys, you know, because they've grown up. Some even who have siblings, you find that the pattern in the home is that there's been now a lot of emphasis on the girl, and the boy is supposed to sort of take not the back seat, but everything is,
but also it starts right from nursery school. You know those rhymes. When my son was in nursery school, he came home and said, "Mommy, am I made of frog's tails and pig's tails?" And I said, "No, Timothy, you're not."
Yeah.
So there's this poem that goes, "What are little girls made of? Girls are made of spices and sweets and my gosh, and everything nice. And boys are made of little boys' tails and, made of tails, frogs' tails and toads." And I said, "No, I am going to speak to your class teacher. She cannot be teaching you that poem.
Oh dear.
Because my son, you are not made of toads and frogs' tails and, And so I empowered him that way.
Yes.
But as he grew, I also said to him, boys have to be gentlemen. And for sure, he made sure he went to the school where they call them gentlemen. A boy is a gentleman because his father is a gentleman. And it's role modeling, really. As parents, we should be the first role models, even before the child goes to school.
Yes.
What a child sees, they will learn. Monkey do, monkey does.
Monkey see, monkey do.
You mentioned something about, and we had talked about it in the first segment, about parents being on the same line, if I may call it. But if you're coming from a different background, maybe you came from a background where your father empowered you, and maybe there's someone who came from a background where they just say boys will be boys, and they expect you to grow like, a bean that has been thrown in the backyard to grow on its own. How then if you realize maybe that you're in a relationship and you're coming from different places, to create that sort of companionship so that you don't do the same to your own children?
Incidentally, like me having grown up in a girls' school from my high school and also having been empowered by my parents from earlier on, I didn't quite understand the norm where girls are supposed to keep quiet. To the extent that when I visited my parents-in-law, I was not very eager to sit on the floor and not talk and jump into the conversation. So my mother-in-law often looked at me and she was like,
we have trouble here.
A girl, be a woman,
girl.
be a woman. Like, soften, girl, soften. And eventually I appreciated where she was coming from. She was extremely conservative, an amazing traditional woman with a culture that I would wish to totally adopt. But that's not how I was brought up.
Yeah.
So I would struggle and, keep quiet when I want to jump in and also discuss and converse and tell them about the football match that we watched. I was like, let me just keep quiet.
For her own sake. Let me be a good girl in this moment.
Yeah, and I think back to, I use the word normalizing.
Yeah.
It's not about the girl or the boy. Let's just normalize characters and strengths, and so you focus more on that than it being about what the boy does or what the girl does. But something that Dr. Kitaka has brought up that I do when you're working with young people is when you're teaching them to understand social expectations or social roles, or it helps to engage with a young person, encourage them to be confident, assertive, do what they want to do. And then I think she even mentioned in the break where you still have a conversation with a young person and sort of explain the different social settings and expectations, so they do not feel that it's something that it's not about them, it's about certain cultures or certain so in this case kneel, not because it is something to do with bringing you down, but in this culture, for this, just for the sake of the way they agree, do it. So you're explaining context for young people. I do that where, when they are a bit confused about, but why this and this? So by the way this is totally okay. However, in certain settings. This setting sometimes expects this, but it has nothing to do with who you should be. If it's your dressing, we had a bit of that conversation earlier. If it is that, just dress a bit more conservatively in certain settings, it doesn't mean that you have to be like that as a woman, but maybe in this particular context, in this particular setting, just to help them understand, because that is going to help them socially to be in different settings and not necessarily feel that it's something against them or it's something that's speaking into who they should be.
So what I'm hearing you say is that we should use wisdom in approaching situations. And I like your approach of empathy, where you appreciate instead of just saying, oh, don't you know, I was raised by, an
it's
engineer, and it must be...
That's
so
aggression.
Yes.
That is unacceptable in our culture. And it's so important for us to believe in our culture, because it is what our forefathers have existed on, to be humble, to be well-cultured, to be well-groomed. And education is not just the formal education that we go to the blackboard or the computer now and learn. It is also the informal education, our traditions, our culture, and our, our norms. Because the day we lose those, we are finished. Because for sure, our forefathers and our ancestors, they taught us good behavior. For me, kneeling down is not a big issue. I will kneel down to serve my husband. Yes. I will kneel down to greet, because that is how I have been brought up. It doesn't take away from me being who I am. Who you are. It just makes me know that this is my tradition. The other thing I didn't want to leave behind about soft boys and tough boys, for sure a soft boy will not succeed in life. As we are expecting our children to reach their fullest potential, we need to support them, to empower them, to make sure that they play the games that will even physically make them stronger. That boys shouldn't be seen playing with dolls and what. They should also participate in the hard physical activities.
For the sake of strengthening
For
muscles?
the sake of strengthening their muscles. They are going to need those muscles when they grow up, for sure. And also as they exercise, as they do their, there's value addition in exercising and in building muscles. You maintain your weight, you reduce on the non-communicable diseases, and also you show that you are worth it. Men are gatherers. Men are the ones that hunt for the food, whereas women tend to be the ones that stay at home and what, but things are changing. And when today, with this economic turmoil that is happening, the best home is where two people are earning a salary.
Or even more than
and,
two.
And you know what? If you're dependent, like solely dependent on your husband for sanitary towels, you're dependent on him for
everything,
for a lipstick, hey, what's going on? And similarly, you don't want this role reversed. Right. Like you're the woman earning and then your husband is not earning. He's going to be uncomfortable because that is not the norm.
And it's going to be a burden on the household. You mentioned something about nurturing, to take you back to that conversation. So what do you see if, for example, like the soft boys that we've talked about, if someone maybe is more gifted in soft skills, maybe it could be organizing, it could be speech, which does not necessarily require them to be out there. It could be maybe even a sport such as fashion, like she mentioned. So how do you encourage us to approach, when you see that person, you see a boy, because I believe that the escape is also, the landscape rather, is changing, and you might see a boy picking up a dress and you get very, very worried and, you want to push him out the house.
Like Letisia already said, do not discourage potential in the child. Always encourage them, support them, help them to make the right choices.
So that would mean watching and being patient somehow?
No, support, leave them to explore their fullest potential. Because the moment you stand there and start judging them and criticizing them for the choices they are making, then you're going to get into depression, anxiety, and all those things. And mental health is a real problem. There's a very thin line between normal health and poor mental health. It's so thin. And you don't want, as an adolescent is growing up, for them to be psychologically tortured or stressed, and that is going to impact on them when they grow up. Because to tell you the truth, an adolescent who has been harassed, abused, criticized, stifled, their creativity is stifled, and they don't become successful in life. We shouldn't do that. We should let them explore to the best of their ability. The window of creativity closes at 25 years. Did you know that? And, when people don't become creative, like participate in games and dance and drama and play games and football and compete, if they don't have that opportunity, and school offers that opportunity, if they don't get that opportunity, then they are going to be the people who settle for the list on the pyramid. And which parent wants their child to be at the list of the pyramid? People want their children to be on the top of the pyramid, earning the most, eating the best food, being able to fly out and have a nice holiday.
Every child.
Work less and more. That's the approach we are looking at today. Work less and more.
From the experience, we'll still go back to the experience that you're having with the children. We talked about what's going right. What are the things that you see? Maybe you might say, okay, from the children that I'm observing, I think we shall have more doctors, you know? Or maybe what you'd say, I wish, parents could focus a lot more on this.
People have role models, and the role models come from various places. What you show on CTV a lot, I hope that people are getting inspired. One, to be a pediatrician. Two, to be a psychologist. And also a media personality.
Yes,
because people watch and people want to relate with people who are successful. And so even as we celebrate the Women's History Month, please, thank you so much for inviting us.
And thank you for
we
accepting to be here.
really hope that we are able to inspire and support and encourage people to be like us,
Right.
But when people don't have role models, they don't have a television at home, they don't even have a radio, the only inspiration they have is the guy who hawks mangoes on the village. That's their biggest inspiration. They want to grow up and hawk mangoes. Is that going to earn them a lot of money? It won't. That person who hawks mangoes is pushing a cart. He's working so hard, he's sweating. And he's probably going to marry a person of not of a lower, what he can afford.
Somewhere, maybe.
But you want your child to be able to work less and earn more, to reason and think, and that's why we take our children to school. That's why we take them to the best schools possible, so that they can achieve their best potential.
Okay, you'll hold that thought right there. When we come back, we'll be going more into the solution. So where do we go from here? We've had this conversation, and how do you also get involved in this? Because it just doesn't stop in this studio. You're watching CTV Month of the Woman, which we are celebrating in the lead up to International Women's Day and the Month of the Woman. We're going for a very short break, but we'll be right back. Don't blink.
Since 1963, this shirt has united fans and players across the country. It is more than just an article of clothing. It is a sense of pride for us as we catch the kinetic action. In the heat of the competition, we stand with our champion. This shirt brings us together. CTV becomes the principal shirt partner for Kcca FC. We are committed to the game, to bridge the gap and bring you closer to the awesome team you love. Kcca FC, more than just a club. CTV, don't blink.
Now Ugandans, as you know, us tuli bantu abatayagala kututegerera wadde. That's why at CTV we're working tirelessly to make that possible. Now my name is Kcca, and alongside one DJ Frost we bring you the brunch time request Lubabu.
You make me jump like kangaroo.
I really love Levixo. Wamanya Jetubonge.
Dance for me, chicky bong, my number one. Girl, now you the ginger. If you know how you the cause it drop.
Now this show happens every single weekday between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m.
Now showing on CTV, don't blink.
Let's hop in my Maserati.
3 words: convenience, passion, and pride. Introducing the Kcca Fc App, made for you to interact with the best football club in Uganda, giving you the latest news, transfers, membership options, merchandise online shop, match ticket booking, and fan zone instant messaging. To download the beta app, go to Google Play Store on your Android and search for Kcca Fc. Download the app, sign up, and voila, you're in. Yes, the app is only available for Android users. iOS users, we are coming soon. The Kcca Fc app, inspired by you, made for you.
Thank you for staying with us here on CTV. I'm Amelia Nakitimbo, your host, and this is the month of the woman here on CTV, where we are holding conversations that will help young women and girls in our community in the lead up to International Women's Day. But as the name suggests, it's the month of the woman, so it just doesn't stop on the 8th of March. And we are bringing you special guests throughout this month who have a lot of knowledge and information and experience working with young people and especially women on issues that eventually affect our society. And today we are discussing an interesting topic on how gender stereotypes form in children. And this conversation just doesn't stop with the children and toddlers, because the things we teach them in childhood are what shapes the adults they become, the leaders they become, and that's what we have been talking about. So in this last segment, as we had mentioned earlier, you had some solutions and suggestions with the children that you've been working with, the parents that you've been working with. How do we now take the conversation forward? And even the person who is out there, even if you don't have a child, you're not a teacher, you're not a psychologist, how do we help our children to get positive images on the gender role in society? I don't know who wants to pick up the ball first.
Yeah, let me speak when it comes to children first, or young people. The way children understand the world is not just by the things we say, but it's through actions. It's through how you relate with them. When we start with the younger ones, just the younger ones, play is a place where they learn a lot, you know. If it is whatever they are playing with, if it's a car, if it's whatever it is that a child is playing with, whether it's pretend play, whether they are imagining things, whatever they're doing, the way the adult, you know, builds context for those things that they're doing. So when you see a child, say, pushing a tractor or a toy truck, you'll notice that a child is actually building on it. Oh, the truck, beep, beep, beep. They even make the reverse sound. Yeah. Oh, it has done this, it has done the other. So I have seen the power in engaging with the child in their world, and then showing them or making comments, so saying things or doing things during that time that show the child that this is normal, regardless of gender. Actually, my take is that where we're headed to, in some areas, of course, gender plays a role, but when it comes to, say, what a person wants to be and how successful they want to be at it, yeah, as opposed to looking at it as, even as a girl, you can do this, and I think we're talking about that, instead of it being a focus on, even as a girl, and then let it just be, again, about the person, you know? So they don't even hear, as much as possible, they don't hear the word gender. They don't hear girl or boy, you know? So you're using their play experiences. When they are watching TV and they are watching something on TV, hear what a child says and build on what the child says. Hear their interests, pick up on their interests. And like Dr. Kitaka said, some parents, of course, are in a position where you're able to expose your child, take them to different clubs and you know, programs, and even at the schools, you know. So if I'm even to go there, for those who are able, in schools, sometimes parents know their children. So of course, sometimes you come in and you say, my child should do this, or I'm thinking they should do robotics, or I'm thinking they should do Girl Scouts, or I think they should do swimming, you know. But hear from your child. And if your child wants to do swimming, you know, and doesn't want to do robotics, because then there's also now this push. Not all of us will want to do robotics, let's say. So don't say you have to do robotics. Pick up from your child, support them in that way. So in the interactions at home, the engagement at home, as they get older and they're speaking more, hear what they have to say and then build on that. Not per se boy or girl. And even in the schools, if it's with the teachers, look at the child, nurture the child as a person, you know, encourage what it is that they are very interested in. And something else that I wanted to bring up that came up before the break, when Dr. Kitaka talked about being successful at what it is that you do. one thing we have seen in the recent years, probably the last decade, is that any profession, almost any profession, can be successful.
Yes.
And success, you know, there will be the doctor, there will be the lawyer, then there will be the I'm sorry to say, content creator, you know, that has become, you know, and I'm not saying that everyone has to be that, but showing a young person, engaging with them and showing them and focusing on how can you be successful at what it is that you want.
Yeah.
You know,
supporting and bringing professionalism into
professionalism and letting them that you can be successful at it. If you're passionate about vegetables, you know, there are people running big vegetable shops, branches and branches, and, you know, focusing on teaching them the skills of being successful at what it is that they do, teaching them those marketing skills, those finance skills, those, you know, so you're focusing more on that and less on that is in the world of labor, let's say. But of course I do acknowledge that in certain, you know, especially with our culture, gender will come in certain ways, but going back to even when you're having those conversations with the girl child and with the boy child, teaching them that much as, you know, you're the leader as a man, you know, in the home, because our culture encourages that, the African culture.
That the man is the leader of the household.
Who is a leader? What does the leader act like? Modeling as a father or as a mother. What are you modeling? He is the leader, but is he, you know, respectful either way? Or is leadership, I dictate, I speak, I do this. So even in the traditional sense, when you're teaching them the certain parts where, yes, sometimes we have to fit into our genders because of culture, just showing that it's not how you should carry yourself everywhere, but according to here, what is a leader? Submission, what is submission? Is it yes, 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 or is it the way you know, relate with your partner according to our traditions? So that's what I would say, you know, in a nutshell.
Yeah. I had three things from what you mentioned, that as people who are working with children, we should be very conscious on the things that we encourage them to do and what we teach them and what we model. And number two, we should be very successful in what we do so that they have, I mean, it also plays out eventually in the development of our country. If you do what you do and you do it well with excellence, then the people that you're nurturing know how to follow excellence. And you mentioned something in a family setting, leadership. I think we could also maybe look at leadership at what? Because even when you're two people, yes, you might be a leader of the household, but then there are aspects where, you know, someone is a lead in different, if you're good team players, that's what I had from you.
Yeah, and also to build on that, I like the positive reinforcement and also being intentional about supporting these children to achieve their best.
Yes.
And I know that Uganda, we've done a lot, and we would like to congratulate each other, but we need to do more. I'm thinking about that little girl in Nakapiripirit or down there in Nakasongola or in Kalangala who may not have the opportunity to start school early, whose brain may not be stimulated at a very early age.
Or even when they go to school, they don't have the
exposure. And early childhood development has become an increasingly important way to support the child's brain to grow, to enlarge and to be creative. And that development starts way back from when the child is in utero. That we should be thinking about the first 1,000 days of life, from the time of conception right through to when the child is 2 years and 7 months. That even as they are in the womb, the father should be singing to them, the mom should be reading books and reading aloud, and when that baby is born, that they are exposed to, you know, I was going to say jazz music, like
music has been known to be very beneficial to children.
In terms of development.
So if we play for them reggae, it will not help them?
Well, it could, but you want them to be calm and composed, and also, you know, the attributes that improve on society in general.
Yeah.
And why globally we are pushing for sustainable development, and the sustainable development goals that are specific for children are so critical, that every child should be in school and that education should be attained, that at least let people study for a minimum of 10 years. because that's going to make a huge difference in their lives.
In their lives.
Yes.
So when parents, because in the current society and as working parents, if you are to bring two incomes, like you mentioned, and it's something that came up in a conversation we were having yesterday, you find that maybe sometimes the parents are just too busy for the children, and so we are leaving them to maybe television or to maids, etc. In that case, for such a parent, how do you help them to be, what would you advise them to do to make sure that they are present for their child in their own way?
I think for me, before you even become a parent, it's important to be trained on how you're going to be the best parent.
So where can you get that training from?
That training is missing. That's a gap. And people out there who know how to parent, please, there's your job cut out already. People need to be taught how to be parents. That once you decide to be a parent, you have to give your children time. You can't, you can't make your cake and eat it. You can't keep watching the cake, oh, my child, a princess, a prince, but you're not there for them. Who do you think is going to parent your child? And so we need to prioritize our children. We need to be ever present for them. Be the ones to be the first nurse, the first doctor, the first counselor, the first person to be their fan base.
Yeah.
Because children know that if their parent believes in them, that's already the first step towards success. And this is progressive.
Yeah.
This is not going to start today and end today. We need to continue this conversation. That parents will need to be role models for our children, but give our children time.
If I may add to that,
Yeah.
Because that question is put to me a lot. Every time I'm speaking to parents, I do say exactly what Kitaka is saying, that you need to give them time. Parenting is the most intentional, I feel it's the most intentional role you will ever have in life, and you're not paid for it. Yeah. But you have to be intentional. You're paid in other ways.
There's payment, yes.
Yeah. but when you look at the time, and I've been asked, you know how busy life is.
Yeah.
I have this, I have this, I have this, I have this. And they seem to be they're growing well, and they're going to the best schools, and they're doing this and this, and I still go back to a parent needs that nurturing time, that bonding time. You're a model through all of that. One thing I have constantly asked parents to do is that as you have your schedule, you have your schedule which has so many things, fit your child into that schedule.
Prioritize
that
your
child needs to be part of what you do. And like she's used the word prioritize. Just like you are uncompromising about certain things that you have to do, you are uncompromising about the time that you spend with your child. And you are open to seeing ways to spend time with your child. Even if it's that, for the whole week you're out of the house. If some of those are errands, if some of those get the time. Of course, you should find time where you can be with them in the home, play with them, engage with them. But even when you find that maybe you're on the go, prioritize and say, I need to have time. So how can I probably do both if I can't stay home? Saturday, I have to go and do ABCD. Can you carry your 11-year-old? You'll be surprised. They love to even go with you. And then you're having conversations at that point. You are spending time with them. So spending that time is a priority. And we are busy, which I acknowledge, but we need to find ways to know that I have so many priorities. Making money to have my family live a successful life is good. My child is a priority in that.
In everything we do. So we're having a conversation on how we can encourage adults to reshape children's perspectives on gender roles and how that impacts future generations in the work that we do, in the economy that we have. You speak, I believe, to policymakers and to all these other people. What have you observed and what can we do better? Do we need policies that would, help us in this conversation?
Yes, we do have policies. Yeah. As you know, Uganda is one of those countries that has a policy about everything. Whether we are implementing those policies is another question, but we would like those policies implemented. For example, there is a policy on adolescent health, and it's really broad. It talks to parenting roles, it also talks to parental responsibilities, it talks about gender and gender inequality and equality, it pushes for gender equality. It also ensures that every adolescent is special and equal, and they should have a space where people talk to them and support them. We have a policy on child health. Do you know that? We have a policy on school health, which is still in the offing, but it will come out, where we would like to see every single school has a counselor or a psychologist. that supports the mental health of children.
So that's good news for counselors out there to know that
there'll
be more in demand.
There will be in more demand.
Yeah.
Because the teachers can't do it alone. Yeah. The doctors can't do it alone. We need the psychologists, we need the mental health experts to support us, to support these children, to ensure that their health is
prioritized.
And I think this is more of a question. It comes to policy, and we talked about the child in Nakapiripirit. Those children in places where the support might not be as much at government level, at policy level. We need to do more in terms of, can you get the experts to go in and do even parent trainings? Parent trainings where a parent is actually understanding early childhood development.
Are some of those being done in urban schools already?
Yes,
in urban schools.
You know, that the sad part is, that in the urban versus the rural, there's already
a divide.
There's inequality, but the world is not equal. Some animals are more equal than others. You read Animal Farm, and it will continue. And as we continue to progress along the capitalistic approach, we are going to see these divides. That the rich will be richer and the poor will be poorer. But the government's role is to ensure that the bare minimum should be availed to even the poorest
of the children.
Yes.
And you have been you've had outreaches that reach children also in rural areas. And I believe that you're speaking from experience when especially you talk about the divide between rural and urban. Just to take you a little bit back on what you have observed, because we mentioned that there's progress. What glaring disparities do you see on gender roles and expectations on rural children and urban children?
I mean, you know, social development varies on a global level, on a regional level, and even, you know, on an individual level. What a person is exposed to is going to determine a lot what they appreciate about gender stereotyping.
Like you mentioned, monkey see, monkey do.
Monkey see, monkey do. If I've never seen that a woman can become a pilot, why would I on earth think that I would become a pilot one day? But if I have seen it, and I just remember this lady pilot from Kenya Airways who landed a plane during Storm Eunice, and were all jubilating, celebrating her intelligence and achievement.
And other pilots had failed previously.
On that day, I received a girl who had come in for an adolescent visit, and she told me, I want to be a pilot. But I dropped out of school. And I showed her the video, and her eyes lit up. She told her guardian who had brought her, I am going back to school next week. Because that was an empowerment point, you know? But this girl had not seen the video. Because she has an Android phone. And you get the point. So even in Nakapiripirit, we should ensure that one, there is rural electrification, that those people have access to televisions, that they have access to teachers who are well trained. And so it goes hand in hand with social development, economic development, and eventually we all develop together.
So the encouragement I'm hearing is for whoever is succeeding, if you can, because we know that people usually also visit when you take school outreaches, go out there and visit, especially those who are not well exposed, because even that one moment, that one visit can inspire a child and spark something in them and break barriers and stereotypes that they've held.
It's called it's not a wahala moment, it's it's a moment. I'll remember what it's called. The aha moment. That moment when you're like, yes, this is what I want to be, and this is what I'm going, I really want to be like her. So people who are successful, people who are in positions of authority should always speak intentionally to children and inspire them. We shouldn't forget that people watch what you do and don't stop doing good.
So we should continue doing that and doing that for our children, yes?
And when you talk about, when we speak to these children or these young people, letting them know that it's not going to be a smooth journey. Actually telling your story. I believe we have a pilot in Uganda, her name has just escaped me, but a young pilot, a female pilot, who is actually she reaches out and talks about her experiences. And for young people, because they experience failure, and when they experience failure or mistakes, that first moment can either represent I'm incapable
of doing that. I don't know if she's the one you mean. There's one I know who's called Farida Ashaba.
Yes,
who flies luxury flights. Yeah.
So when it goes back to us, and when we are talking to these young people, when we go out there, sharing your experience from when you were younger. Yeah. You know, we haven't gotten here on a smooth path.
Yeah.
There have been moments of adversity, there have been moments where you've had challenges, because a child is picking up on all that, and then they relate to that as they continue pushing for what it is that they want to be, as opposed to when they started and they're like, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be this, and then along the way, you know,
you might set out to become a pilot, and at the first failure we say, you know, girls were not meant to be pilots after all.
Failure, like Professor Sewankambo recently said, that success is progressive failure.
Yeah, it's a powerful statement.
It's a very powerful
because
statement.
We often fear failure.
Yes, you know, you fail and you stand up, you fail and you stand up, and eventually you succeed. Because for me, that was what I took away from his talk when he talked to us last week about being successful.
Yeah.
And so even as we talk to young people, we need to tell them that failure is possible, but you don't give up. For me, it's not giving up that is the key point. And so that when you look back and smile, and in this digital era, we need to be intentional about communicating to young people. I mean, don't be shy of joining the social media apps that they are on, and develop hashtags. We developed a hashtag of I am proud to be a pediatrician, proudly pediatrics. And one of my students made t-shirts, and we give them away. Hashtag proudly pediatrics.
Do you have smaller ones for little kids?
Oh yes,
as well?
we do have those ones, because kids come in and they want to, you know, experience what does a pediatrician really do. And we feel happy when people say, I want to grow up and be like so and so. It makes you proud. It makes you feel honored.
You talked about the age when children start picking up on these gender stereotypes. And maybe there's a window where we now start, at what point do we take in all that knowledge, and now is the time to start maybe relearning and unlearning consciously some of those things that we've heard? If maybe there's a teenager who's watching us, are they still picking up on those things, or is now time for them to start consciously educating themselves and learning and relearning? At what point?
I believe you can unlearn at any point.
At any point, even when you're a 6-year-old, maybe?
Yes, even when you're a 50-year-old, you can unlearn.
Especially as an adult, yes.
Yes, we're always unlearning. We're always unlearning in our different roles. We're always unlearning at every point. So it is what you are exposed to. Like, you know, when you think, I want to be a pilot, but it won't happen. You watch a video and then you realize, aha, you know, I can actually do this. When you have that conversation with a parent, when you watch CTV, you know, there's always a moment to unlearn from the young ones. You know, there's always time to unlearn. So it is about the guidance, the support, the exposure, and just knowing that at any one point you can actually help a young person, you know, change and see things differently.
Indeed.
But also we need to use a carrot and stick approach. We can't be pampering them all the time. We need to ensure that they make right choices and stay in the right direction.
I think that's the point you brought out at a certain point when we were on a break, especially with, say, teenagers. I think one psychologist described it as when you're a child, I mean, there's no responsibility. That's what it means to be a child. When you're a teenager, you have learned some things, you're opinionated, but you're expected to make mistakes because you're not responsible. But what it means to be an adult is you have your freedoms, but you also have responsibility.
You are the one who takes responsibility for your actions.
And the decisions.
As a teenager, you're like, no, I'm not an adult, I can't even go to prison. But we have seen young people go to prison. There's juvenile prison.
And just repeating that it's not, I would say you're not going to experience the consequences and understand them as an adult. They start from when you are younger. When she's talking about carrot and stick, when you are teaching a young person and you're empowering them and all of that, you're still teaching them that there are consequences for your behavior. This is how, you know, this is how things go, the consequences that you give them. It's important that it starts early on, at all points. Even 5-year-olds experience consequences. You know.
So if we are learning and unlearning gender stereotypes, when you meet someone who, for example, they'll meet you and they just say NAS, how do we help them?
I'll educate them if I have the time.
Yeah.
But surely, as people get to learn, they will see that you're the one leading the word round.
Yeah.
You're actually not the nurse.
Yeah.
They'll get it eventually.
They'll get it eventually.
And I like that because people will always talk. People will always have wrong ideas of who you are. So again, you as a person, and we deal with this with teenagers, I'm sure, whatever they're receiving, is such a big aspect of how they identify. Yeah. So teaching that even when people make this comment, who are you? I'm a doctor.
Are you who you say you are?
Yes.
And also you need to be wise, you mentioned that, and have emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I think you pointed
Choose
to
your
that.
battles.
Yeah. We usually see sometimes there is a banker, I think in Nigeria, who had been promoted to a position, and a magazine, wrote a headline on that and said female banker, and there was a lot of backlash for calling her female banker. Why not just say banker?
I once received an award and they wrote, he has received this award. And I put it in my bedroom and we laugh about it. Yeah. Like, why do you call me he?
Yeah, well, and we could go on and on because the conversation is getting really interesting, but that's how we have to wrap it up for now. That's our conversation for today. Thank you very much, ladies, for honoring our invitation and coming here. And we hope that we shall continue to have you more and more. And we hope that you've also taken something from this conversation to be responsible as you are nurturing young children and the things that you teach to them about gender roles in society, because eventually they affect the country that we have and the policies that we set. You've been watching CTV Month of the Woman with me, Amelia Nakitimbo. We're going to continue these conversations even tomorrow. We have more guests lined up for you, and brunch request will be coming up a little shortly at the top of the hour, so don't blink.